Oh, I understand. All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to call this meeting of the TRPA Operations and Governance Committee to order. The date is Wednesday, January 25th, 2023. The time is 8:05. First item on the agenda is the roll call to determine a quorum. Maria?
Ms. Salding,
Here?
Ms. Dis,
Here.
Ms. Gustafson, Ms. Hill,
Here.
Mr. Honigman.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We will now go over the remote and in-person meeting rules for the day. For the members of the public who are joining us remotely, to observe the meeting, go to trpa.gov. Under the calendar header, click on Governing Board Hybrid Meeting for January 25th, 2023. There you will find a link to the public webinar hosted on Zoom. To address committee members directly with your comments, raise your hand in Zoom by clicking Raise Hand at the bottom of your screen at the appropriate agenda item. With your hand raised, you will be unmuted by TRPA staff and have 3 minutes to address the committee. If you have used the dial-in numbers to join us by telephone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand and be unmuted. To remote committee members, if you wish to speak, you can also now raise your hand in Zoom. You will find the hand icon on the bottom of your screen. I know that everyone's very conversant with that. Remote committee members may not use the chat box to make any comments or have sidebar conversations. Please, everyone, remember to mute your mic unless speaking to cut down on background noise. Finally, I would also like to ask that all remote members turn on their cameras if they are able. And we've got Alexis and Jessica. Their cameras are on, and we're expecting Cindy Gustafson to join us in person here momentarily. Members of the public who have joined us in person, please raise your hand at the appropriate time for public comment, and you will be called on to the front to speak. Committee members who are in person, please raise your hand if you wish to comment and speak clearly into the microphone in front of you. If you are viewing the webinar on a personal computer, please ensure that your microphone and speakers are turned off to prevent audio feedback into the room. All right, next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda, Chris?
There are no changes to the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Then we will deem the agenda approved as posted. Next item is item 2, approval of the minutes. We have a set of minutes from December 14th, 2022 on page 9 of your packet. Does any member of the committee wish to make any changes? Okay, seeing none, everyone's shaking their heads. All right, then I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Move to approve.
Thank you. We have a motion. Any comments on the question? All right, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any objections? All right, motion passes. Thank you. That brings us to agenda item number 3, which is a recommendation to approve the December financials. Information on this item can be found on page 81 of your packet. Chris.
For the record, Chris Schuyler, Finance Director for the agency. If I could have the first chart, please. As you can see from this chart, the fund balance is positive in the state and local category. That's due to receiving the state monies up front. We'll spend that down through the balance of the year. Fees are relatively neutral right now. We have been running well ahead of budget on the planning side. And on the grant side, there's a substantial negative there, but that's mainly just because we just finished the second quarter and we bill our grants quarterly. So in the next month, we'll start cranking out those grant invoices, and that grant negative will turn around. Not an issue there. We don't anticipate any troubles recovering money. If I could have the next chart, please. Again, in terms of performance to budget, we're pretty much on track. All the state revenue is in. Planning fees continue to run well above prior year, the last 3-year average that I normally track against. And the grants are just where we should expect them to be. On the expenses side, comp at 46%, that's pretty much where we would expect to be right now. There are some vacancies, but we've actually, I don't see Angela in the audience, but we've actually been having some success in filling our positions. So if we can just keep other people from quitting, we might have a full staff shortly.
Working on that.
Working on that, yes. And contracts are starting to catch up. They do always lag a lot. So we get a lot of the contract invoices really after the end of the fiscal year. If I could have the next chart, please. I think I've committed to reporting quarterly on the mitigation funds, especially now that we're recognizing many of these as revenue and expenses. So this is just a brief update that year to date, we've collected about $2 million in mitigation fees, and we've dispersed about 500,000. Now, obviously, that's going to change significantly. We have already written the check to NDSL for the $2.6 million that you approved last month in this meeting. And for the CTC project, We're just waiting for that deal to start to gel and come together before those funds get dispersed. If we do that, then we will certainly end this year in the negative on mitigation funds, but this is all money that's in the bank. So it's not a financial problem to us. And it's actually a very much a positive thing that these funds are getting used for their intended purpose. As a reminder to everybody, especially our new members, the mitigation funds isn't really money that TRPA spends on its own or for its own purposes. We hold those monies for other parties, the land banks for excess coverage and the counties for the air quality and water quality stuff until they can put together projects that consume that money. So we're kind of the trustee on those funds, even though they now appear in our revenue and expenses. Then if I could have the next chart, please. Monthly cash flow. This is the way the year is always here. We have the big positive at the beginning of the year when we get the state funds on, and then we just spend it down during the course of the year. I don't think there's any real news on this chart. It's following the normal trends. Obviously, with those mitigation fund disbursements, it's going to dive pretty quick on this, and we will almost certainly end the year with a negative cash flow. But again, that's money that's in the bank, so it's not a financial factor. Finally, I didn't do a chart on that, but we're still working through the budget issues with the states. Our preliminary read on the governor's budget from Nevada is positive, that we've gotten most, if not everything, that we've asked for. Nevada is in a good situation right now. It's kind of, things swing back and forth. At the beginning of COVID, Nevada was in a terrible situation and budgets got cut left and right, while California was doing very well because of surprising strength in the tech world and in Silicon Valley and for a lot of federal financial. Now that seems to have flipped, where California is suffering because of their heavy dependence on taxing the richest people. Income tax, 50% of their income tax comes from 1% of the population. Whereas Nevada, as long as tourism remains strong, Nevada's in a pretty strong position right now. Their revenue projections for the upcoming biennium are pretty positive. And so Governor Lombardo's lucky to have some degree of freedom with his budget. And certainly, we do have a situation where there's a Democratic-controlled legislature and a Republican governor. So the next 5 months of session will be fascinating. We do have our preliminary budget hearing scheduled for February 14th. That's before the subcommittees, the joint subcommittees of Ways and Means and Budget in the Nevada legislature. On the California side, we're basically awaiting the May revise. And we've talked about this in the past. Our budget request basically got punted in May revise because of some technical issues with the environmental license plate fund. That's all I really had to say on where we are on monthly financials, unless somebody has a question. Sorry.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Wait a minute.
Vince? And then Alexis.
I just wanted to add one thing, and Madam Chair, if I may, Julie Reagan here. One thing that's not accounted for in our general fund budget would be the Nevada budget related to EIP bonds. And we were successful in working through the Nevada Legislative Oversight session last year to queue up several resolutions and letters of support to move forward with roughly $20 million in bonds that would support EIP projects, that would support the 777 share for transportation. The Nevada share of that is $2.5 million a year for the Transportation Action Plan and some other important programs related to transportation. And so we are working with the partners to find where those monies have been located. They weren't in the usual places in the budget. And there's a meeting going on this morning down in the Capitol. So we'll keep you posted as that moves forward, but that's something that we'll be working on diligently because, of course, the Nevada share of the EIP is critical, and it has a process to move through, flowing out of the governor's budget into the session and then through the treasurer's office. So we're trying to run some of those facts down. I just wanted to let the board know about that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Julie. I appreciate that. Alexis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris, I'm so glad you were able to dig into the governor's budget. I was not able to do that after the state of the state. And I was just curious when you said most, if not all, what do you mean by that? What did we have built into his budget, just so I know what we need to do as board members moving forward if there's things that are missing?
Everybody's telling me we got everything. But I'm looking at the NEBS report and it doesn't quite seem to mesh. So I just need to reconcile those two things, what's actually in NEBS versus what they told me. So what they've told me, and this comes straight from the budget office, is that all of our requests were funded, including the money for TTD.
Oh my gosh, great job, team. That's amazing. I'm so happy. Congratulations. I know that it's a long time coming, and also making TRPA whole is a big deal as well. So I'm just so thrilled and relieved. Thank you for that update. And I have no questions on the financials. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. And for those who are new to the board, the reason Alexis is so thrilled is because she chairs TTD.
I'd also remind Alexis, we do have a budget hearing on the 14th, so
There we go. All right.
you might want to show up for that.
Chris, I was just curious, on that last graph, I think having that combined with kind of the operating budget and the mitigation funds kind of makes it less useful for me from a fiduciary responsibility. I was wondering if we should separate those out and have one that just shows the mitigation funds, because if it goes down and looks like we're running in deficit, it's kind of hard to pull out what's really happening from that. Would that be possible? Or
No, that's an excellent point. And this is why I've been whining about GASB 84 forever, because including our financial mitigation fund. So we'll start to do something. We can't really do it in the official documents that the auditor has reviewed, but we'll just start doing some pro forma reporting that separates operations from that. We'll back out that stuff. We'll do that for it. I've been meaning to do that. I just haven't gotten around to it. Cash flow, a little bit harder on there, but I think I can extract it from cash flow charts as well. I am a cash flow oriented person, so that's important.
Okay. And that will relieve you of having to go into a lengthy explanation of why we have a negative balance at the end of the year, right?
I doubt that.
All right. Any other questions by members of the committee? Jessica? No? All right. Okay. No further comments from members of the committee. We will then move on to public comment on this item. Any member of the public wishes to address the committee on this agenda item, please raise your hand now, either in person or by clicking the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or by dialing *9 on your phone, and you will be called on and unmuted by a TRPA staff member. Any members of the public wish to comment here in the audience with us today? Yes, please come forward. Hi, Ellie. Good morning.
Got it. Good morning, Ellie Waller. Thank you for the details of the budget and digging in where most people can't find the information. Just in the future, as the budgets are identified, where they're identified, if we could get a matrix so the public can also see where the budget breakdowns are and what did finally get approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. Any other comments from members in the audience? All right, seeing none. Who's handling public comment this morning? Okay, Catherine, any public comment?
Madam Chair, there
Actually,
are no hands raised online to comment on this item.
okay, all right, thank you. Then we will go ahead and close public comment. If there are no further comments by members of the committee, I'll entertain a motion that the governing board approve the December financials.
So moved.
Okay, we have two motions. Thank you so much. If there are no comments on the question, Maria, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Gustafson. Ms. Dis.
Yes.
Mr. Honigman,
yes.
Ms. Hill,
Yes.
Ms. Aldine.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you so much. That brings us to agenda item number 4, which is a recommendation to approve the 2022 audited financial statements. Information on this item can be found on page 103 of your packet. And Chris, I'll let you invite or introduce our guest, Jeff Paul from Davis Farr.
Okay, just a quick little introduction. Davis Farr has been our auditor for many years. I think this is a good thing because it means they have a built-up knowledge of our financial systems. They don't have to teach themselves what we're doing all the time. They also keep us straight and teach us all the new GASBs and FASBs and stuff. Unfortunately, our audit partner couldn't be here today. He's in Antarctica, and apparently they don't do Zoom there. So Jeff, the manager on the audit, has agreed to sit in here and catch beers from the audience. And from
Okay. Good morning and welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. All right, so again, my name is Jeff Ball. I'm the engagement manager for this job, and I'll be going through the slide deck here. If you want to go to the next slide. Okay, so the discussion topics we have today are going to be to go over the scope of the audit. We're going to go over management responsibilities, auditor responsibilities, and then finally the results of the audit. As far as the scope of the engagement, there are a number of different reports that we issue. The main item here is the audit of the annual financial statements for TRPA. We also do a single audit concerning federal funds and expenditures of federal funds. We do smaller audits for the El Dorado County LTF, El Dorado County STA, the Placer County LTF, Tahoe Science Advisory Council, and we do an audit of the Prop 1B funds. As far as management's responsibility, they are responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of financial statements, including the notes. They're responsible to prepare those financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And they're also responsible for designing and implementing and maintaining a system of internal control. And the goal of these 3 bullet points is to have financial statements that are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error. As far as the auditors, next slide, please. Thank you. As far as the auditors, sorry, I have my notes on this one. So our responsibility is to express an opinion on the financial statements. We conduct our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards. In order to express opinion, we have to plan and perform our audit to obtain a reasonable but not absolute assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement. This is done through judgment-based samples and testing, as opposed to 100% absolute assurance, 100% testing that would give absolute assurance. Into the results of the audit, as far as the timeline, we began our planning procedures with an initial communication to the board in October 2022. We started our interim testing in June of 2022, where we were performing certain tests, including our updating our understanding of the system of internal control. Our final test work, where we're testing year-end numbers, began in October 2022 through December 2022. We provided the first draft of the financial statements in December 2022, and the final report was issued in January 2022. We issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which is the highest level of opinion that you can give. It essentially means that your financial statements are free of material misstatement, and we did not identify any significant deficiencies or internal control weaknesses. I have a slide here showing just some real broad numbers of the financial statements. There was a net income of about $300,000 this fiscal year. You can see that all major categories, assets, liabilities, net position, revenues, expenses, all increased, which I think indicate the stability of the organization and the nominal growth year over year. With regard to the TDA audits, those were the 2 El Dorado County and the 1 Placer County audit. There was one finding that happened in each of those audits. It had to do, it's a relatively minor issue having to do with the timeliness and the timing associated with receiving audited financial statements from those counties. There's a requirement that TRPA is supposed to receive those by a certain date, and they were essentially not received by that date. They were filed and received, but it's really a minor issue dealing with timing. With regard to the single audit, there were $5.3 million. Next slide, please. There were $5 million in federal expenditures for the fiscal year. In order to perform our testing, we analyze all of that money. We assign risk to specific programs, and then we audit those that are deemed high risk in order to gain a certain amount of coverage over the total amount. With that, we tested the Watershed Restoration and Enhancements Agreement Authority program. And our audit revealed no audit findings. And then finally, the other two audits, the TSAC audit and Prop 1B, we also had no findings to report as a result of our procedures. And then next slide, please. One thing that did occur as part of this year's audit, there was a new GASB standard that was implemented by management. We worked with management to help analyze all of the agency's leases. So GASB 87, the main idea behind it is that they wanted a more comprehensive way to recognize long-term leases. So in order to do that, we obtained all the leases of the organization. We checked it against the standard and determined which leases need to be recorded under this standard. There were 3 lease receivable leases that were recorded as part of this, which resulted in a new lease receivable account booked in your financials, as well as a deferred inflow of resources for the revenue coming in future years. We reviewed all lease payable leases, and we did not end up recording any because they either did not apply or were immaterial. Finally, as part of continuing on. So as part of our audits and as part of your financial statement, certain estimates are used in order to produce the amounts in the financial statements. Some significant estimates that were used and considered as part of our audit were the useful lives of capital assets, which are then depreciated over long periods of time. The accruals for goods and services received for which invoices have not been received. So unbilled receivables, employee usage of accumulated vacation or compensatory leave. And then as a result of our review of the management estimates in this regard, we found all estimates to be reasonable and have sound bases. We noted no disagreements with management. Management provided representations to us at the end of the audit, kind of certifying their responsibility for their part in taking ownership of the financials and their system of controls, the responsibilities that we were discussing in one of the first slides. We noted that there were no consultations with other accountants, which is sometimes the case. There were none, it was all internal. And we remain available as a resource throughout the year. So we're in constant contact with management, even outside of the audit period. I think June to December is typically when the majority of work gets done, but especially when we have new lease standards, we make ourselves available year round so that we can come to meetings like this in January and help prep for things before year end. All right, that's my presentation. Are there any questions?
Well, nice, short and concise. Thank you, Jeff, very much. And kudos to staff. Well done. Are there any comments or questions by members of the committee? Everyone is shaking their head no. The only question I had in the board packet, Chris, on page 103, when it relates to this one issue revolving the untimely receipt of copies of the related to the FT or the LTF and STA accounts from El Dorado County, you indicate that we will change our process to resolve this issue. It's really not our process that needs to be changed. So what conversations have you had with El Dorado to keep this from happening in the future?
Well, the process change that we're going to be making is that we're going to call them up and harass them.
Okay.
Report in a timely manner.
Okay. All right. More engagement. All right.
And member Lane is joining this committee, which will be a good thing from El Dorado County. Yes.
Fantastic. All right. All right. That sounds good. All right. Fantastic. All right. Let's go ahead. If there are no comments by members of the committee, we'll go ahead with public comment on this item. Any member of the public wishes to address the Operations and Governance Committee on this agenda item, please raise your hand now, either in person or by clicking the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or by dialing *9 on your phone, and you will be called on and unmuted by a TRPA staff member. Any member of the audience with us today wishing to comment on this item? Okay, seeing none. Yes, go ahead. Chris, did you have a comment?
It's been suggested I should make a clarification on one of the points in here. The leases that we're talking to with the lease standard, There's been a whole long thing in FASB and an accounting world about dealing with leases, and this is kind of the final end of it. In our case, we are not a capital intensive operation, so we don't really lease equipment. In this case, the leases that we're talking about, the lease accounting rules change. It goes both ways. So in this case, the leases he's talking about are we as a lessor. So it
Right.
refers to the building and the leases we have for people in the building.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay.
And I also want to give a shout out to our controller, Kathy, who's here with us in the audience.
Yes, Kathy,
And
thank
the
you
other
so
members
much.
of the staff,
Well done.
Casey, Davey, Melissa Uppendahl, and Caroline.
Okay, if you're all here in the audience, stand up and take a bow. Okay, all right, well done, well done. Okay, Catherine, any folks from the public joining us remotely who wish to make a comment or ask a question on this item?
Madam Chair, there are no hands raised to comment on this item.
Okay, all right, thank you so much. Then we will close public comment. And we'll entertain a motion to recommend the governing board accept the financial or the fiscal year 2022 audit. Is there a motion? Okay, we have a motion. Thank you, Vince. Mario, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Dis,
Yes.
Ms. Gustafson,
Yes.
Ms. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Honigman,
Yes.
Ms. Aldine.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
All right, thank you. All right, that brings us to agenda item number 5, which is a recommendation to approve the 2023 watercraft inspection fee schedule. Information on this item can be found on page 185 of your packet. And Tom is here. Tom Booz is here to present. Here, good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. This is my first time in front of this committee, so it's very exciting for me.
Oh, yes.
And I have to admit, it kind of beats going in front of the governing board, but it's
You
my
hope.
opinion. Yeah, so we're here to talk about fees, the fee schedule for the Aquatic Invasive Species Program. My name is Tom Booz. I'm the Aquatic Invasive Species Prevention Coordinator with the TRPA. The fee schedule is generally approved by the governing board, but because of some agenda congestion, I'm told, I've moved here. So I'm here to ask for a recommendation for a motion to the governing board to approve the watercraft inspection fee schedule. Next slide, please. A little bit of background. I was told to be brief, so I will be brief, but the AIS program requires an inspection and the purchase of a sticker in order to launch into our regional waters. And this is to simply prevent the introduction of aquatic invasive species. There's fees for these services, and that's what we're here for today, both fees for inspections and to do decontaminations. If you do not pass the inspection, then we do decontamination to rid the vessel of anything bad. There are 3 types of stickers. You can see 2 of them here, the Tahoe only, the Tahoe in and out, and a single inspection, which is good for a week of inspections at the lake. The Tahoe only are those boats that don't leave Lake Tahoe. They come and go to your driveway, come back, but the seal is intact. So the process is pretty simple. We inspect your boat. If we do a decontamination, we put a unique seal on the boat wire and a little plastic thing that seals the boat to the trailer. Then that goes to the launch ramp. We have seal inspectors there to verify that it has indeed been inspected. Then the Tahoe in and out is for those boats that come and go often and need to be inspected every time they leave the lake and that seal is broken because they went somewhere else. Next slide, please. A little more background. This is the 23 annual funding sources. We have the general fund from California, Nevada at 32%. Then our fees, which is what we're talking about here today. And these fees are basically the fees for inspections and decontaminations plus the convenience fee that we have for people who choose to make an appointment rather than just show up at the station. And that's at 35%. And then we have been really, really successful competing for grants with California Department of Boating and Waterways. That's 19% of the current budget. And we have Lake Tahoe restoration funds at 11%. And lastly, the Aquatic Nuisance Species Task Force funds that we get annually for having a management plan with them is 3%. Next slide. So these are the inspection fees. There are no proposed changes for 2023. That you can see some categories, the Tahoe only, and then the in and out and the single inspections are based on size and complexity of a watercraft. Generally, anything over 17 feet is a little bit more complex, takes more time, more effort, more knowledge to inspect and decontaminate. So those are the categories. The only adjustment we're proposing is a $10 lost sticker fee to cover the cost of administration and hopefully incentivize people to not lose their stickers. Happens around 10 times a year, roughly. And it is a good bit of administration to reconcile that sale of the sticker, whether it was at the inspection stations or at the boat ramps. And so hopefully this will incentivize. Next slide, please. And the decontamination fees, again, no proposed changes. There are categories, as you can see, based on the amount of work that we do. There's a single system, $25, complex decontamination, which is multiple systems. So a bilge, an engine, ballast tanks, not ballast tanks. Last year, we included a special fee for ballast tanks because they just take so much time and effort to decontaminate. And then lastly, an attached mussels fee of $250. And next slide. So yeah, like to have a motion. They're hoping to recommend that the governing board adopt this resolution approving the 23 watercraft inspection fee schedule. And I thank you for your time and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, well, you're true to your word, Tom. That was very short and concise. I just had one question on the 2023 sticker fee schedule. It says the current fee for a simple decontamination is $20, but the proposed fee is $25. So is that just a clerical error? Is the current fee $25? Because the representation was made that there would be no increases in fees.
For the decontamination fees?
The simple decontamination.
Yeah, that's still 25.
Okay,
I'm not
was it
sure.
previously 25?
Yes.
Okay, because in this chart, it says 20. So I just didn't, for the benefit of the public, I don't want them to allege that we were unfaithful to our word. So there is no increase in any of the fees. Okay.
No increase.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you. All right. That's great.
Just the only change is the $10.
Yeah,
for
right.
the last sticker.
Right. I just, if they saw this exhibit, I just wanted to assure them that it was 25 last year and it would be 25 this year.
And I did just want to emphasize that the program is in good financial shape. A lot of hard work from Dennis and Tom and the others to make sure that it's adequately funded.
Well,
That's
this is
why
an
there's
extraordinarily important program, so we appreciate all of your hard work. Okay, all right. So any member of the committee have any questions regarding this item? Okay, Alexis, Jessica, no? Yes.
I
Jessica.
do, Madam Chair.
Yes, Alexis.
Thank you. Is it a policy that we just do cost recovery on the program and not fund any other programs through this program?
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I?
Sure,
Julie
please.
Reagan. Thank you for the question, Member Hill. I'm glad you asked because I wanted to give a little perspective, particularly for some new members, and welcome Mr. Settlemeyer today. And we're in our operations mode here of this committee. And certainly Secretary of State Aguilar, just very happy to have you with us. And we'll get into more introductions in the main board meeting. The invasive species program, if those of you who remember maybe a decade ago, Shelley, you'll remember this. We were looking at a fiscal cliff at the time, and that is when the two states came in. The federal government had funded the prevention program largely through Southern Nevada Public Land Management Act funds, SNPLMA, and those monies sunsetted. And so we actually got this through the work of this board, got the two states engaged to cover 750,000 of those of the public share. And at that time, that represented about half of the funding and the other half came from boater fees. And it was all dedicated to prevention. And over time, the costs of that program have gone up with, increased labor and just general increases in the execution of the program. So the chart that you just saw, you'll notice the states are more like at a third share now because we've been able to use federal Restoration Act funds through the appropriation successes we've been having. But all of those funds are for prevention. Now, we also have the control issues that we're working on with invasive milfoil and other areas like the Tahoe Keys. That's out of a separate accounting, but overall, these funds are staying on the prevention program. And we're trying to keep that equity between the public share and the private contributions of boaters so that it is it is in balance roughly. And so even with that infusion of federal dollars, which we're very fortunate we've had, because we would have had a situation where we would have had to increase our appropriations from the states to cover, but we've been able to leverage the new support from the federal dollars. So yes, so this is all for prevention. Anything you wanted to add, John?
The only thing I wanted to clarify was that it's not total cost recovery. It's a cost share with public funds. So we're not even to the point of, and we would have some difficulty it's a program to fund the cost of the program to go on top of that and seek to gain additional revenues for those services or other services.
Does that answer your question, Alexis?
Yes,
Yes,
a little
okay.
bit. I probably need to do some further work with Julie to fully understand that the cost of the program, but I'm happy to make a motion if no other people have questions on this recommendation by staff.
I appreciate that. I wanted to weigh in, during the years when invasive species, obviously, it's still high on our agenda, but I mean, it was an imminent threat. What we didn't want to do was to raise fees for private boaters that would discourage them from complying. I mean, voluntary compliance is extraordinarily important in this program. And so that's why we were striving for equity between public funding and private subsidy. So just wanted to add that.
Yes.
Cindy.
This isn't relevant for today's decision, but in the future, I'd love to sit down and understand how many boats of the various sizes, how many stickers at the various levels, and kind of what those trends have been. Because we certainly feel that we see an explosion of additional boating at some locations, and just understanding the dynamics, if that's just a one-off or if that's really occurring, and then what those trend lines look like. So that's more deeper into the operations of the program. So
Yeah, we normally do a comprehensive briefing annually,
Mhm.
but what we're doing here today was just to get the fee schedule. in
Right,
place
I
prior to the
understand.
briefing. We will
Yeah.
come back with the full.
great. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, we'll be happy to do that. I think there'll be some interesting takeaways, and maybe Tom wants to jump in. But just to get back to Member Hill's comment, just concisely, the public investment does not cover the cost of the program, nor do the fees collected. So it is a partnership, and we use the model of the EIP of the public-private, as Shelley indicated, the Madam Chair indicated. So we will sit down with you and go over all the details of that. And it might be interesting just in the context of the overall budget. Happy to do it.
Yeah, policy wise, I think it's a good discussion to have, bigger discussion. So I'd love to be included in Cindy's questions as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions? But yes, Tom, you had something to add.
I do. In my brevity, I neglected two things to add, and I would love to chat with you about trends, because one thing I've learned is that there are no trends. Every year we think we know what is
What's going to
happen,
happen
and
and it doesn't.
yeah.
Well,
Um,
I was very involved with the Lake Forest launch facility. And so I watch it, I use it, and it's just an interesting amount of vehicles and
Yeah.
launches.
And the
Yeah.
North Shore is challenging with some closures, but I think that all might change this year. So the two things, one is the chart that I had up for the inspection fees was the actual fee for the inspection, but with the shoreline program that was enacted, it's additional $12. So for a Tahoe only, it says 33, but we actually charge 45. There's a $12 additional fee. Some of that money, that $12 goes to control and the thought behind that was, and John or Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but they are allowing more boaters on the water, which could potentially mean more spread of invasive species that exist in the lake. So that offsets some of that cost. And then there's like 2% of it comes back to the program for administration costs. So just a clarification note. And then my other comment is on page 3 of my staff report in the third to last, whereas I have a budget of 1.9 million and it's actually 2.38. So just a mistake. The 1.9 is the budget that we have with our contractor, the Tahoe Resource Conservation District. And I had just finished that. And so my brain was very focused on that number, not the total number.
Understood. Thank you.
So
Tom.
thank you.
Appreciate that. All right. And this is a little off topic, but Dennis, have you been raiding John's coat closet? I'm sorry. It's an it's an inside joke. I'm sorry. Not nearly
It's
as
uglier.
distinctive, that's true.
You noticed
Okay.
the lag period, John wears.
Okay, all right, thank you. As I say, I apologize. That was a little off topic. Okay, so if there are no further comments or questions from members of the committee, we will move on to public comment on this item. If any member of the public wishes to address the committee on this agenda item, please raise your hand now, either in person or by clicking the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen or by dialing *9 on your phone, and you will be called on and unmuted by a TRPA staff member. Yes, Ellie, please.
Good morning, Ellie Waller, Douglas County resident. Used to be Placer County. Thank you, Cindy, for the trending issue. I've been following the new kind of like VHR short-term rental issues. People are buying boats and doing the same thing, running commercial entities. I'm glad to see that we have both the PUDs in Placer County researching and making sure that commercial licensing and all the proper permitting is happening. And then I have just an overarching statement. Bringing these types of items to committee, understand the congestion and lots of things. And this is much like a consent item, I would say. But what types of subjects, and no answers required today, can be moved to committee instead of the entire board? I saw the word approve, so I was going to get up and just speak about that anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. Items can be removed off of consent, obviously, so there is that option. Any other member of the audience joining us here today wish to make a comment on this item? Tom, did you have another comment to make? Okay. All right, Catherine, anyone joining us by Zoom?
Yes, Madam Chair, Jan Briscoe, if you unmute, you can address the committee.
Good morning, Jan. Jan? All right.
Dan, I can see you're unmuted. It doesn't look like there's any feedback coming in through your microphone. If you check your microphone settings.
Well, Jan's trying to resolve that problem. Catherine, anyone else in the queue?
No, Madam Chair, and Jan has put her hand down.
Okay, all right. Well, Jan, if you're listening, if you have any comments to make, you can do so by contacting Tom directly. And I apologize for any technical difficulties. Okay, then we will go ahead and close public comment at this time. If there are no further comments by members of the committee, I'll entertain a motion to recommend to the governing board that they adopt the proposed resolution as amended. Again, the amendment was to change. Well, I can find it here. The amendment, just so it's on the record, is in the third to the last whereas, where it says the watercraft inspection plan for 2023 requires a combination of public and private funding, currently estimated at $2.38 million to inspect and decontaminate motorized watercraft. And then there was that one minor change to the fee schedule itself, noting that the fee for a single decontamination has not changed. It was $25 and it will be $25 for the coming season. So is there a motion to that effect? Okay, thank you. All right, we have a motion. Mario, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Gustafson,
Yes.
Ms. Dis,
Jessica?
Yeah, sorry.
Mr. Honigman,
Yes.
Ms. Hill,
Yes.
Ms. Aldine.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Great, thank you. All right, that brings us to agenda item number 6, which is a recommendation to approve authorizing the executive director to submit an application to the California Department of Housing and Community Development's higher impact transformative allocation of the Regional Early Action Planning 2.0, REAP 2.0 funding program. Information on this item can be found on page 185 of your packet. And Karen, good morning, Karen. Will be presenting.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Operations Committee. Today, we're asking for your recommendation for governing board authorization to submit a proposal to California's Higher Impact Transformative Grant. This is a competitive grant that's part of California's Regional Early Action Planning Grant Program. And the goals of that program are focused on encouraging infill development, reducing VMT, and furthering fair housing. This particular grant program that we're applying for, or asking for your recommendation for today, the Higher Impact Transformative Grant, is seeking transformative programs that are scalable across the state and that integrate housing, equity, and climate goals. So we received some feedback from this committee and also from the local government and housing committee when we came forward late last year to request authorization for the MPO allocation of the REAP grant. As we thought about what we should apply for the HIT proposal, we went out to our partners, particularly those entities that are also eligible to apply for the grant, the local jurisdictions and the Washoe tribe, and also worked with some of our other partners, our community-based organizations and other representatives from the Tahoe Living Working Group to come up with a proposal that we felt was competitive, supported what the region needed, and also really aligned with the grant's goals.
Karen, excuse me for interrupting. There's a correction. If you're looking for this information, it's actually on page 305 of your packet.
Okay. So the proposal, so we submitted a proposal to use the extensive experience of the basin with conserving sensitive lands and incentivizing transfer of development into centers through our transfer of development rights and growth management programs. But through the proposal, we really want to look at how we can update those programs to also meet equity, housing choice, and affordability, and reduce climate goals. So this proposal aligns well with the later phases of the Tahoe Living priority actions. And we also feel that it will address quite a few of the issues that actually came up during the discussion of the Latitude 39 project last month, particularly really looking at how we handle new homes of different sizes and types and the differing impacts that they have on our communities. So this proposal, this competitive proposal, also builds on the MPO allocation grant, which we also submitted to the REAP program. That is for the next phase of the Tahoe Living priorities. And this one really focuses on comprehensively looking at those later phases of the Tahoe Living priority actions. And then just before I wrap up, I wanted to give a shout out and a thank you to the city of South Lake Tahoe and El Dorado County staff who really got in the trenches with us and helped to write and edit the grant proposal. And also TRPA board members, Ashley Conrad Seda and Vince Honigman, who also advised on the development of the grant.
Great. So just a quick question. When you refer to innovative opportunities, could you be a little more specific? I'm sure the grant application itself goes into more detail, but it says that capacity building toolkits may include training opportunities, mapping and visualization tools, and innovative opportunities. Could you just clarify that for me, Karen?
So one of the elements of the proposal was sort of a more robust community engagement and community capacity building piece. So along with updating and looking at those two major elements of our code, the transfer of development rights and growth management systems, we also wanted to build up our tools for working with the community on understanding proposals. So those could be things like some places call it a citizens academy, things like just providing training opportunities for both our local community members and potentially our agency and our board on how to be, just increase the capacity for two-way engagement on the proposals that are coming forward. That could include using like visualization and mapping tools to show what proposals look like or what these changes that we're proposing could, how they could affect the region from a visual capacity. Other areas have done things like paying for community members to attend trainings, things like that. And our transportation team is in the midst of completing a transportation equity study. And there's quite a few capacity building recommendations from that study. So we plan to build on that with this proposal as well.
So if we're successful in securing this grant, does it require capacity building within our organization to handle this additional workload, or can we handle it with existing staff?
We wrote funding into the grant proposal for some additional staff to manage the grant because it would be pretty significant workload.
And these would be contract employees, right? Not full-time staff members. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Julie Reagan, yeah, it could go either way, really at our discretion. We could outsource help or decide collectively if we needed to envision a path where we could bring somebody on, but it's a short-term grant, so we'd have to take that under advisement
Right, because you have to have the money to support that
to
position.
and carry that over
Right.
time.
Right, okay, all right, so that's to be determined. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Karen, very much appreciate it. Yes, Cindy, did you have a question?
I did. Karen, thank you. And I thank the counties and the city for participating. Are you working with the North Shore, the Mountain Housing Council or other groups to provide input too? I know they're doing a lot of work with small developers, maybe somebody who owns a lot or two and wants to try to create more housing. We're obviously a large entity with a lot of hoops to go through. For some people, it's a little intimidating, so.
Yeah, we definitely received input and also a letter of support from the Mountain Housing Council. And one of the things that we struggled with a little bit with the proposal and the requirements of HCD was that actual capital projects needed to have significant commitments to complete, like they needed to have agreements in place, which we felt like for any individual projects, we weren't at that stage yet. But we did definitely receive feedback on looking at our system as to how we can help support maybe small developers, not just large developers. And that's part of that equity assessment.
Absolutely. And just looking at those incentives and education. That's a lot of what the JPA is working on and the Mountain Housing Council are working on is education for those. So great. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Any other members of the committee wish to comment on this item? I'm not seeing any. Okay, all right. Then we will move on to public comment on this item. If any member of the public wishes to address the committee on this agenda item, please raise your hand now, either in person or by clicking the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or by dialing *9 on your phone. You will be called on and unmuted by a TRPA staff member. Yes, Ellie, all right. We have a frequent flyer in the audience.
I haven't attended, Ellie Waller for the record, I haven't attended committee meetings in a long time, but this one piqued my interest. I attended meetings yesterday with some of the TRPA staff and some of Placer County staff to get updates on some of the housing things and things going on in Placer County with the Tahoe Basin Area Plan update. Would like to make sure that we are visiting the definitions again on workforce housing, the levels, because there's so much confusion in the public where achievable came in through the Mountain Housing Council definitions. Just want to make sure that this is part of the process and maybe some of this funding can go toward better understanding what workforce are we trying to serve here? How do we do that? And how do we get product on the ground? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ellie. Okay, any other member of the public with us today wish to comment on this item? All right, seeing none. Catherine, anyone on Zoom?
Yes, Madam Chair, Ann Nichols, if you unmute, you can address the committee.
Good morning, Ann.
Morning, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Yeah, thanks so much. What I'd love to see is workshops, I guess it's 2.4 million, it's public money. And you've already gotten 600, I think, from REAP, 600,000 for redoing the regional plan with this flawed achievable housing lack of definition or really helping those that need it. But the other thing that really worries me about public money is this $40 million that the Prosperity Center is trying to get. I'm not sure what the oversight is. I don't know who's going to be using it, what the rules are. And So if you could do meetings, because the public really wants to know about this, public meetings about what's going on with all this money and who gets what. And, I know you guys need money, definitely. You've got a big operation there. But please, this 40 million, which is covering a lot of this stuff you're already talking about. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Catherine, any other folks on Zoom wishing to comment?
Madam Chair, there are no other hands raised to comment on this item.
Okay, thank you. Then we will close public comment on this item. And if there are no further comments or questions by members of the committee, I'll entertain a motion to recommend the governing board approve a resolution as shown in attachment A, authorizing the executive director to submit a request for funds and application to the California Department of Housing and Community Development for the higher impact transformative allocation.
So moved.
All right, thank you, Cindy. We have a motion. We're wearing Vince out this morning. Mario, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Gustafson,
Yes.
Ms. Dis,
Yes.
Mr. Honigman,
Yes.
Ms. Hill,
Yes.
Ms. Aldine.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. All right, that brings us to agenda item number 6, which is the quarterly treasurer's report. Information on this item can be found on page 493. And make sure I'm not fibbing. 493 of your packet. And Chris.
For the record, Chris Kyler, Finance Director for the agency. The main thing, just in the macro sense, is that the Fed is now signaling that they're still going to be raising interest rates to fight inflation, but probably at a lower rate. So instead of seeing 1% hikes or 0.75% hikes, we'll be seeing smaller hikes. Their policy always has been to balance out unemployment and inflation. This first chart is the same chart I already showed you in the monthly financials with the cash flow. So go ahead to the next chart, please. The main messaging today is everything is well within our investment policy. And in fact, because of the our rising interest rates, we pretty much kept everything safe and short. So almost all of our money is either in the LAIF and the LGIP investment pools, effectively in money market accounts and in government stuff. We've only got about 6% in the corporate world. As the rates start to stabilize, we may look to change that strategy and put some more into corporate and try to get a little additional yield, as long as it can be done with the safe investments. The next chart will show you that everything's well, that 6% of the pool that's actually rated is all rated fine. It's all A rated materials and stuff like that. And then finally, just as a reminder, the majority of this money that we are investing is really money that we're basically holding in trust. It's the mitigation funds and project securities that we're holding for other people. I wish we had that much money to spend on things we want to spend.
Close, they can't hear you.
Okay, is that better? Yeah. And that's all I really had to say on the investment thing, unless anybody has any questions.
Okay, any questions by members of the committee on this item? All right, seeing none, this was informational only. That brings us, we'll open it to public comment. However, if any member of the public wishes to address the committee on this agenda item, please raise your hand now and go to webinar to be unmuted by TRPA staff. Any member in the room wishing to comment? Ellie's left, so I guess there'll be no public comment in the room. Catherine, anyone on Zoom wishing to comment?
Madam Chair, there are no hands raised to comment on this item.
Okay, thank you. All right. Then we will close public comment. And again, this was informational only. That brings us to the next agenda item, number 7, upcoming topics. Chris.
Chris Tyler, again, Finance Director. I'll be brief because we're already over our time commitment here. Budget season with the 2 states is a primary focus now for the next few months. We will, of course, always also be addressing this for next year's budget, internal budgets, when you do the governing board priority setting offsite in April, which kind of squeezes our budget process, but it'll be part of that, developing our internal budgets for next year. We still are not future items. We're at some point we'll probably bring in mitigation fees for an inflation type adjustment for those. We decided to take those off of next month's presentation by Arlo. Arlo will focus more on the process changes in the planning organization rather than trying to pollute that presentation with other things. And then finally, just over the next year or so, it's time to update some of our financial policies, and we'll bring those to this committee periodically to do those. And I'll talk more about those when it comes closer.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Any comments or questions by members of the committee? All right, then we'll move on to public comment on this item. If any member of the public wishes to address the committee on this agenda item, please raise your hand now, either in person or by clicking the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen or by dialing *9 on your phone, and you will be called on and unmuted by a TRPA staff member. Any member joining us in person wish to comment on this item and future agenda topics? All right, seeing none. Catherine, anyone joining us by Zoom?
Madam Chair, there are no hands raised to comment on this item.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll go ahead and close public comment and move on to our agenda item number 8, which is committee member comments. Any member of the committee have any final comments? Any pearls of wisdom to share? Okay.
Madam Chair, I just have a quick one.
Sure, Alexis, please.
Thank you. This is my last Operations and Governance Committee meeting. I'm so sad. This has
Well, we're
been
sad for you.
an incredibly beneficial learning process for me on being on the TRPA board, but apparently I'm on too many committees, so they've kicked me off. But I have to just say I've learned so much from the committee members, and our chairwoman, Ms. Aldine, thank you so much. You've done an amazing job chairing this committee, and I've learned a lot from you as well. So I just wanted to say thank you so much, and I'll see you on the rest of the committees.
That sounds great. Alexis, it's been a pleasure having you on our committee, and we will miss you.
Well, she's
without a
embarrassed me
doubt.
again because I should be saying the same thing. I'm bidding adieu. I actually thought I was done today, so that's why I was late. I apologize for that, but
You're
it's been
that anxious to exit. huh?
well, I actually was that anxious to have an extra half hour of sleep before I drove around the lake. So
Listen, understand.
anyway, it's really, Chris, I appreciate all the hard work your staff, your team do, the clean audits that we've gotten, and I know I'll still be interacting with you. So
Well,
thank
you'll
you.
be missed as well. And chairing this committee has been a pleasure, largely because of our staff, because of Chris and his support team. So, all right. So if there are no further comments by members of the committee, we will move on to our last public interest comment period. If any member of the public wishes to address the committee at this time, please raise your hand now, either in person or by clicking the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or by dialing *9 on your phone, and you will be called on and unmuted by a TRPA staff member. Any member of the audience wishing to comment on any item not already discussed? All right, seeing none. Catherine, anyone joining us by Zoom?
Madam Chair, Jan Briscoe.
Jan, all right.
Jan, if you unmute, you can address the committee.
Still having.
Jan, I don't see that you're connected to audio. Oh, there it is. If you unmute now.
Hello,
Yes, Jan.
good morning. Good
morning.
morning. This is Jan Briscoe. Finally, I got a new computer and I can honestly say I have no idea why. I could hear you, but you couldn't hear me. So thank you very much this morning. I just had a couple of comments and I wanted to first of all thank staff, John Hester, Wendy Jepson, and others for helping me with some of the information that you have in your packet. And it really would be probably helpful to have this come back as an agenda item so that we can all understand it. On behalf of Tahoe Lakefront Owners Association and my individual clients, we have on page 488 to 490 of your packet. I hope you'll take a look at that because we have a huge number of mooring and shore zone applications that are some of them 300 days, some of these going on a year and 2 years. And we know staff has been challenged. Everything has been upside down, and staff under Julie Reagan's leadership, the commitment to put more resources toward this is going to make a difference. But I really believe that when projects are taking a year or more to process, that we really need to have better oversight from the governing board. And hopefully you're looking at that, and maybe we can come back next month and take a look at this again and see significant progress. But it is a problem for us. I get calls every day, homeowner associations, individual lakefront owners, where we have a program that's been adopted in 2018. And in 2023, we still don't have the majority of these applications processed yet. And this is really creating a problem for us. And just so you know, in California, we cannot even begin the California State Lands process until TRPA issues their permit. They won't take us to commission. That process is a year more. So by the time these projects that have been in for a year with you get finally permitted, we're another year with the state of California. So it is hugely important, and we're here to offer as much help as we can. And again, we appreciate staff, but we really have to get this under control. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Jan. And John, Hester, maybe we can have a presentation on as a future agenda item
Sure.
to talk about the challenges
Sure.
associated with processing these applications. Okay, thank you, Jan. Catherine, anyone else wishing to comment?
Madam Chair, there are no other hands raised to comment on this item.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. So let me regroup here. That brings us to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, don't hesitate. All right, we have a motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye, motion carries. The Environmental Improvement, Transportation and Public Outreach Committee will follow.